Welcome to the first State of Play volume that I'm hoping will turn into a series for Gaming Insurrection. I am Editor-in-Chief Lyndsey Hicks, and I did a little number crunching. I decided I was going to do a video for this and talk about what exactly the State of Play is and what we had hoped to accomplish with it. I am the editor-in-chief of Gaming Insurrection, and I do the number crunching. I also do quite a few other things for Gaming Insurrection, but mostly I do the number crunching. And for the fourth quarter 2013, I decided I was going to do a feature on different franchises for video games. Pretty well-known franchises. We're talking million sellers that immediately, as soon as it's announced, people are pre-ordering and have sold like millions upon millions upon millions of games. So, series that would be in this category: Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, Tekken, Street Fighter, Ridge Racer, Doom. I'm trying to think, what else did we cover? Metroid. And I think that's pretty much it. We did 10 series that in this feature that have been traditionally very good sellers that make a lot of money. Immediately, their name recognition is pretty much, I mean, it's immediate. People know what you're talking about when you talk about these series. So I did a little number crunching, and I came up with a bunch of charts, and you can see it in our newest issue of Gaming Insurrection, which will be hitting the web on October 5th and 6th. And I did a bunch of colorful charts, I must say, that demonstrate how many units sold in the millions for each series, with the top 5 selling games of each series. And some of them have very special ones, like they're broken down by genre. So, let's get started. So, the first one on my list is, we're going to go, because I have my list here. And, by the way, this is my usual look anyway, but I'm being very nerdy right now because, don't you know, only nerds crunch numbers. That's not really true, but I like the nerd look anyway. So, the first franchise, of course, is Mario. I mean, everyone knows Super Mario Brothers. That's a worldwide, immediately recognized game. When you say Mario, people automatically assume it's synonymous with video games. And it used to be that way. You didn't say you were going to play video games. You were going to play Nintendo. Or you were going to play Mario. It could have been something completely not Mario, and people would have been like, hey, you're playing Mario. And we're like, no, it's not Mario. So, our first franchise is Mario. Number of copies sold overall. This is the main Mario series. I should throw this disclaimer in. It is the main Mario series. We're not talking about spin-offs. If you add in the spin-offs, that's another 200 million. Let me just go and tell you that. That's another 200 million. Numbers of copies sold overall for the main series, 276 million. Also, and by the way, these numbers are courtesy of VGCharts.com. That would be VGChartz.com. Some of the numbers are a little strange, such as the numbers for Mortal Kombat. They were very strange, because I knew there were more than what they were saying, but, and some of them didn't even have the numbers, and so I had to go find those other places, but they're a pretty good source of tracking numbers, and being able to tell you what games sold the most in a franchise. So, overall copies, back to Mario, overall copies sold 276 million, top 5 games would be Super Mario Brothers, sold No, I'm sorry. It sold 40.23 million copies. Super Mario Brothers sold 40.23 million copies. If y'all understand, you gotta think about this in comparison. That's 40 million copies. They sold 40 million copies overall of this game. It's a simple game with 36 levels. 40.23 million copies. That also counts, that's counted with the bundles sold with the NES. Because the NES sold 40.23 million units worldwide. And that's how they came up with the number, because Super Mario Brothers came as a bundle. And then New Super Mario Brothers sold 28.74 million copies. This is a DS title, which is considered part of the main Mario series. 28.74 million. That's a lot of Mario games. That's a lot of Mario games. And then New Super Mario Brothers Wii. 25.47 million copies. What in the world? Seriously, Mario has made a killing. There is not a Mario game, a mainline series Mario that has sold less than 10 million copies. Hell, there ain't one that sold less than 15 million copies. Basically what they're saying is, if your game has the name Mario in it, and it has Super Mario from Nintendo in your game, and he's running and hopping and bopping through some levels, you're gonna sell 15 million copies out the gate. Just out the gate, you're gonna sell 15 million. Okay. Super Mario World sold 20 million copies, which is not unbelievable considering Super Mario World was a pack-in title. Though Nintendo doesn't believe in pack-in titles to start with, so they'll always do the bundle later. But Super Mario World sold 20 million copies. I can't believe that game was, and it was a good game. I love Super Mario World. It's one of my favorite Mario games. But 20 million copies? God. And what surprised me, though, was the fact that Super Mario Bros. 3 sold 18 million copies. Super Mario Bros. 3 should have been more popular than Super Mario World. Like, I don't understand how Super Mario World sold 2 million more copies than Super Mario Bros. 3. Super Mario Bros. 3 was arguably the best Mario game to have ever been released. Okay? It was also one of the most popular, especially in the US. It was pretty popular in Japan. But the US, it hit fever pitch long before it got to, before it actually came out. Because of the Wizard. They had the cross promotion. So, but everybody I knew, plus their mama, their cousin, their cousin, their cousin, girlfriend, mama, and daddy played Mario Brothers 3. Okay? And also Mario Brothers. I'm not surprised by Super Mario Brothers selling 40.23 million copies. I'm not surprised by that. But my God. Super Mario Brothers 3 should have sold more than 20 million copies, and I swore it did. But that's a feat in and of itself. They sold, I don't even know the math on that, how many total that is, but that's a lot of games. Let me see here. I can do a little bit of quick math. Alright, so say you got 40 and 20, that makes 60 million right there. 18 million, another 18 million, that's 78 million. Plus 28 million more, that's 16 carried in 106 million. Plus another 25 million. That's, what, 131 million? That's just off the top 5 games. That don't even count the other games that's in the mainline series that wasn't more than 18 million. Okay, so you're already 131 million. This is where you get the 276 million from. Okay. Or at least half of that. So then, alright, then I broke it down by Nintendo system. By Nintendo system, for the NES, you have 40.23 million for Super Mario Brothers. Alright. Super Mario Brothers 2. And we talking about Super Mario Brothers 2 USA, not Super Mario Brothers 2 Japan. Okay. The one that's got all 4 characters and you can pick up things and throw things and you gotta fight Wart. That version of Mario Brothers 2. 10 million. The game sold 10 million. 10 million I was one of those 10 million because I bought a copy of it when I was in like the 6th grade. Super Mario Bros. 3, the 18 million. Alright, then you come to Super NES. Super Mario World sold 20 million copies. Alright, we've already established that. Super Mario 64 on Nintendo 64 sold 11 million copies. And it was not a pack-in here. As far as I know, it was not a pack-in in the original release of the system in like August or September of 96. Was not a pack-in title, because if I recall correctly, you had to buy a separate game. 11 million. 11 million copies for that. Okay, so then jump into GameCube. Super Mario Sunshine. 5.5 million. 5.5 million people bought a copy of that crappy Super Mario Sunshine. That's crazy. So okay, you can sell less than 10 million with a Mario name on it, but still. I have no idea why I have New Super Mario Brothers here under GameCube. I did change this in the chart. It's under DS, and that of course has sold 28.74 million. Jumping to the Wii. New Super Mario Brothers Wii, we pointed out 25.47 million. Super Mario Galaxy sold 10.4 million copies. Which doesn't surprise me because, I mean, what else were you going to buy? What else were you going to buy on Wii besides Mario? You going to buy Mario Kart probably, and Zelda, but there wasn't too much else you was going to buy. Maybe Animal Crossing and maybe Smash Brothers. Other than that, what else are you going to buy? Mad World. But, yeah. Okay. Super Mario Galaxy 2 sold 6.36 million copies. That is a follow-up sequel game, which is highly unusual for a Mario mainline series game. It sold 6.36 million copies. And it was a follow-up. Like, wow. Okay. So, as you can see, Mario is a mover. He is a unit mover. Okay. We're gonna skip the Doom one, just because, let me tell you, Doom sold a lot of copies. I think total, that's probably 10 million copies. It sold about 10 million. That's about right. Number of copies sold overall, 11.45 million copies. That's the number that I got from VG Charts. And they've only really had 6 copies of Doom, like 6 games released. So yeah, in the mainline series. So let's jump to Zelda. Zelda's another big one. Let me tell y'all, Zelda has sold 71.08 million overall copies. That's nowhere near, of course, the Mario number. But that's still a lot of games for a franchise. That's a lot of games. And there have been a lot of Zelda games. And all of these Zelda games that I have down here are part of the mainline Zelda series. So, top 5 games. The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess sold 8.41 million copies. Ocarina of Time, 7.6 million. The Legend of Zelda, 6.51 million. I was very surprised by that number. I thought The Legend of Zelda sold more than Twilight Princess, but okay. And by the way, these ones where they have multiple versions of a game, that like Twilight Princess came out on GameCube and on Wii, that's the total number between the two systems. And there's some others like that later with like Ridge Racer and Tekken. The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass, 4.97 million. A Link to the Past, 4.61 million. I swore A Link to the Past sold more than 4.61 million copies because everybody played A Link to the Past. Like, it seemed like everybody and their daddy had a copy of A Link to the Past, Super Mario World, Super Mario Brothers 3, and Super Mario Brothers. And now, going by Nintendo system, of course, you've got The Legend of Zelda at 6.51 million. Zelda 2 Adventure of Link, 4.38 million copies. I was very surprised by that. That game was hard. The Legend of Zelda: Link's to the Past, 4.61 million. And then, of course, there are the Game Boy titles. Link's Awakening at 3.83 million. Link's Awakening DX sold 2.22 million copies, which doesn't make sense. Oracle of Seasons sold 3.96 million. Oracle of Ages was also 3.96 million. I got these numbers from Capcom themselves. They posted them on a chart that talked about the number of copies sold alongside, because Capcom did these games. They talked about the number of copies sold alongside Resident Evil and Street Fighter. So that's how I checked my numbers on that. Minish Cap sold 1.42 million. Ocarina of Time, of course, 7.6 million. I was not surprised by that number at all, and I actually thought it was more than that, because Ocarina of Time sold a lot of copies. Everybody played that. Majora's Mask sold 3.36 million. Jumping to GameCube, Wind Waker sold 4.6 million. I was very surprised by that number. Four Swords Adventures sold 0.81 million. And Twilight Princess on GameCube sold 1.59 million. Jumping to Wii, Twilight Princess sold 6.82 million. Skyward Sword sold 3.68 million. Link's Crossbow Training, this was the surprise. Link's Crossbow Training sold 4.98 million copies. The hell. That was tied to something else. I know it wasn't a standalone sales thing. It was tied to something else. But my God, that sold a lot of copies. Seriously? That's crazy. Phantom Hourglass, jumping to 3DS and DS. Phantom Hourglass sold 4.97 million. Spirit Tracks sold 3.2 million. And Ocarina of Time 3D sold 3.12 million. I was quite surprised by that. I was quite surprised. I didn't realize there were that many Zelda games, actually. I was quite surprised by that. So, jumping to the next one, we're going to do Tekken. Because Tekken is, you'd be surprised at the number of copies that Tekken has sold. Tekken has sold 41.4 million copies over 7 games. What? That's a lot of copies. For a series that started out in 1994 and has only done like 7 games, that's a lot of copies for 7 games. Okay. The top selling Tekken game is actually Tekken 3. I was surprised by that. I thought it had sold more. I thought Tekken Tag sold more than that, but I was wrong. And Tekken 3 only beat out Tekken 5 by like 0.91 million copies sold, because Tekken 5 sold 6 million copies. I was quite surprised by that too. But there's been a lot of Tekken games sold. Tekken Tag Tournament, which is one of my favorite Tekken games, sold 4.63 million. I was quite enthused about it. Tekken 2 sold 5.45 million games. That is a lot of games, especially for Tekken 2. And it was a highly popular game when it came out. I remember that. Tekken has sold a lot. Let's put it that way. Moving on to the giant one. This is the one where, this is another big seller. Street Fighter. Street Fighter has sold a lot of games. Street Fighter has sold nearly as many games. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty certain Street Fighter has sold as many games as Tekken has. I'm certain they've sold more than that. These numbers down here, I'm kind of surprised by that number, but as a matter of fact, I know this number is probably wrong, because I can't give you the overall number just yet. But let me tell you, we're going to break this down by Street Fighter series. Okay, and what I did was, when I did this, because I was interested to see, based on the numbers, how many copies of Street Fighter 2 did they sell? And how many of each copy of Street Fighter 2, as in, how many of the different versions of Street Fighter 2, how much did they sell for each version of 2? Okay, now, first, let's go by series. For Street Fighter 2, the Street Fighter 2 series, that's 14 million. Wasn't surprised by that at all. Street Fighter 3, I'm guessing 1 million. They did not have numbers for Street Fighter 3, but I know that series sold at least 1 million copies. It's got to have sold at least 1 million. It was a million seller. I'm certain of that. And then Street Fighter 4 is the next one with 7.42 million. I'm not really surprised by that, but really. Street Fighter EX had 1.83 million. Street Fighter Alpha had 5.28 million copies sold. I know for a fact Alpha sold a lot of copies. And that includes in the Alpha series, Alpha 2, and Alpha 3. Alpha 3 sold quite a bit of copies. That was a very popular fighting game. And Street Fighter Cross Tekken sold 1.1 million copies. Okay, now jumping my top 5 sales for each game. You would not be surprised probably if you found out that the 3 of these of Street Fighter 2 games were in the top 5 sold. That does not surprise me at all. Street Fighter 2 World Warrior on the Super NES sold 6.3 million copies. That's crazy. Street Fighter 2 Turbo sold 4.10 million copies. Street Fighter 4, that Street Fighter 2 Turbo was on Super NES, by the way. Street Fighter 4, all versions of it, and that's like all versions of Street Fighter 4. 3.74 million copies. That's because it was on 2 systems. Or, yeah, 2 systems. Super Street Fighter 4 sold 3.68 million copies. That's crazy. And Super Street Fighter 2 on Super NES sold 2 million copies. That's crazy. And then Street Fighter 2 versions. This is what I was curious about. World Warrior sold 6.3 million, which is crazy. Street Fighter 2 Turbo sold 4.1. Super Street Fighter 2 sold 2.15 million, and Street Fighter 2 Special Championship Edition for Genesis sold 1.73. Now, I'm also curious because they did not have numbers for Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, because it never really came out. It came out for certain systems, but it was so after the fact that, like, not that many people bought it. There was the Saturn version, and then, of course, there's Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo X for matching service. I'm sorry. Super Street Fighter 2 X for matching service, which is Super Turbo. So there's those 2 versions, and, of course, there was the arcade version. And then you can also play it in Street Fighter, well, I think you can play it in one of the collections. So, yeah. It was so after the fact and so under-advertised by that point that people were tired of Street Fighter. So, of course, they weren't going to buy it. But another big one that I really want to get into a little bit is Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat franchise has sold 32.52 million copies overall out of all of its games. And I'm pretty certain that number is correct. Pretty certain. Though the numbers for the original Mortal Kombat, I was curious, they did not have the copies for Super Nintendo. Though I'm pretty sure that sold about 500,000 copies. Probably sold 500,000. Pretty sure. But the top 5 sales, you'd be surprised about this too. The top 5 sales for Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat 2011, the newest version of Mortal Kombat to come out, sold 4.27 million copies. I swear that sold more copies than that. Too many people were excited about the reboot of that series. Like, that's the reboot version of Mortal Kombat. Too many people were super excited about that. And then Trilogy, all versions sold 3.75 million. MK vs. DC Universe, all versions sold 3.31 million. Deadly Alliance sold 2.91 million. And Mortal Kombat, the 1992 starter of the series, sold 2.67 million. And that's with me throwing in at least 500,000 for the Super Nintendo version. Plus, I had the numbers for the Genesis version. I was quite surprised by that. Quite. Mortal Kombat games by era. Now, this was interesting, and I decided to break this down and see how this worked. Mortal Kombat games by era. The trilogy games that would encompass MK, MK2, MK3, Ultimate, MK3, and MK Trilogy sold 11.72 million copies. That's the bulk of the Mortal Kombat series. Okay. Action adventure games. This would include the terrible Mortal Kombat Special Forces, the pretty great MK Shaolin Monks with Kung Lao and Liu Kang, and Sub-Zero Mythologies, which was terrible. Those sold 2.29 million copies. And then the reboot and crossover era, that would be MK versus DC Universe and MK Reboot, sold 7.58 million. And then there's the 3D fighting versions with Deadly Alliance, Deception, and Armageddon, which sold 6.92 million. And I was pretty surprised by those numbers. I was very surprised. The other one that I really want to talk about, I've chronicled Ridge Racer and Metroid, but the other one that I really want to talk about is and also we have Soul Calibur on our list. That was the one I was forgetting. It was Soul Calibur. The one that I really want to talk about last here is Pokemon. Pokemon has sold a hell of a lot of games. I was not aware how many games had been sold in the Pokemon franchise until I did this feature. Pokemon has sold 219.03 million copies. That's a hell of a lot of Pokemon. Just to break down the number of games sold, and this is serious, real numbers. I'm very sure that these numbers are correct. The red, blue, and green, this is the top 5 games sold. Red, blue, and green sold 31.37 million copies. That's a lot of goddamn Pokemon. Seriously? That's a whole lot of Pokemon. And I was in that group because I bought red and blue. I bought red and then blue later. 31.37 million copies for a Game Boy game? Good Lord. Gold and Silver sold 23.10 million copies. Diamond and Pearl sold 18.08 million. Ruby and Sapphire sold 15.85 million. And Black and White sold 14.76 million. And I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and tell you that Pokemon, when this next one comes out, X and Y, it's probably going to sell 15 million too. This is crazy. Pokemon has sold so many games. It's crazy. Like, Pokemon, and I broke it down by genre because there's a lot of different Pokemon games. And that's where the bulk of this stuff comes from. The role-playing games sold 191.37 million copies. Puzzle games, 1.03. That would be stuff like Pokemon Puzzle League, Pokemon Troisy, stuff like that. And I have both of those. And they're actually both pretty good, decent games. Strategy games, that's like Pokemon Ranger and Mystery Dungeon. 12.77 million. Miscellaneous, 8.05 million. That encompasses stuff like Pokemon Pinball. Racing games, because there are racing games with Pikachu in it. 0.76 million. That's a lot of games. That's more than 500,000, I can tell you that. Adventure games. That might encompass that Ranger stuff, too. 0.38 million. So that's less than 500,000 copies. Action games. 1.04 million copies. Oh, and some of those is like Pokemon Snap is like strategy, I think, too. And then you got the other category, which is 3.63 million. So that encompasses everything that's not on that list. What in the world, Pokemon? I have come to the conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, that people like to sit here and say that Nintendo is dead, Nintendo dying, Nintendo is gonna fall off and they'll stop making stuff and get out of the business. They will never get out of the business. they will sell systems and games for the rest of eternity. All they gotta do, I've come to the conclusion that all Nintendo has to do is make a Mario game, a Pokemon game, a Mario Kart game, and a Zelda game. And it's gonna sell a system, okay? And by a system, I mean millions. They could survive on them 5 alone, and that's what they have done for the past 25 years, at least. They have released a game from one of those categories and just sold millions upon millions of games. Okay, Mario by himself, if he was in a spin-off game plus his mainline series, has sold 446 million copies worldwide. In, let's see, I guess it's been Mario came out in 1985, so 30 years. Let's just say 30 years. All right, because it'll be 30 years in 2015 for Mario, the 30th anniversary of the release of Super Mario Bros. He has sold 446 million copies in 30 years. Like, long before we even got to the 30-year mark. Seriously? What? That is crazy. Zelda done sold 71.08 million. Pokemon sold 219 million. They have made millions off of just like 5 core franchises. Metroid, which I didn't even mention really. I didn't even get into Metroid. But let me tell you how much Metroid has sold. Metroid has sold 17.59 million copies. That's for a series that's not even like a mainline Nintendo franchise. It's more of a secondary franchise, okay? They'll tell you they love Samus and all that. But Samus Metroid games don't traditionally sell very well in Japan. They sell more in the US. She's more popular, Metroid, and Samus by extension is more popular in the US. Okay. She still sold 18 million practically. So they'll never get out of the business. Why? When they gonna sell it, they know they're gonna sell a game. They can make crap and put it out, and somebody, as long as they got the name of one of them franchises on it, it's gonna sell. I mean, please. Let me tell you something. Nintendo know what they're doing. So that concludes this feature video on sales for video game units. I had a lot of fun crunching the numbers and doing charts and things once I figured out how to get my Excel charts to actually plug the numbers in and make it work right. I had a lot of fun doing it. And I thought the numbers tell a very important story, such as Nintendo's not going anywhere. And there's a lot of franchises out there that have sold at least 1 million copies. There are a lot of franchises out there that have sold at least 10 million copies. And you can even go find all this stuff on Wikipedia if you so care. But you can definitely go look it up at VG Charts. I mean, for all of their interesting omissions and numbers that they do have, they have a lot of the correct data. So, you know, it's fun crunching numbers. So, I'm glad that I was able to do this feature, and I hope to do another follow-up and do some more series, and talk about the numbers with each series. So, look forward to that. It'll be a while before I can ever do this again, but we'll see. I enjoy doing the number crunching. So, thanks for watching, and check out our other videos at gaminginsurrection.com, and look at us on YouTube, where you're probably seeing this, under Gaming Insurrection. That's our username on YouTube. We're also on Twitter. You can follow us at Gaming Insurrect. That's GAMINGINSURRECT. I always have to think about how to spell that. But thanks for watching, and leave us a comment and let us know what you think. And we'll see you later.